Alright, I am back at the bus here. I'm going to bring that tall ladder system around to this side, and that'll help me get these rivets higher up, and then I'll do the top rail drilling and start putting bolts in the top rail. So that's the plan for today, get more rivets in and hopefully start getting bolts in that top rail. Alright, so I'm up on the industrial ladder here. I'm going to start drilling the top a little bit as I go, and then I'll drill these holes from the inside and rivet them from this position. I think I'm going to do, sort of working down, do all the remaining rivets at once. That way I won't be moving this ladder as much. So that's my current game plan. Alright, so I decided that what I would do is, I'm going to lean out the door here, come up the seams first on both ends of that sheet, maybe even all the way down before I start doing the top rail. I think that makes more sense. So anyway, I've got that seam to finish, a few more, and then I've got, I think, 2 more. Well, depends on if you count the doorway, but about 2 to 4 more seams to do, and then I can start the top rail. Alright, so I have that seam done. I have the seam at the end. You can see it, the seam at the end here, completed from before. I'm not going to worry about the middles right now. I'm going to switch to the tops after I get the edges done. I want to run that seam up, finish that one. And then I have this seam here, and I'll probably just move that clamp up higher when I go to run the top bead. I want to be able to do the top bead pretty much all at once, because once the caulk is in place, if it dries, it'll be creating extra space, and I won't be able to squish it down with rivets. So even with the bolts, it would probably not set up correctly if I can't do it all at once. Alright, so now I have this side of the door done, going up with rivets. Next I'll do this side of the door, finish that side of the door, and then I think I have one more seam over here. After that I'll be able to start on the top row. Alright, so I got this edge done all the way up, and now I have that seam over there to do. After that I can put that clamp up higher on the end and do the top bead with, first I'm going to do drilling from the inside, and after that I'll drill from the outside, and then have my son come out and help me run bolts down the line. Okay, so I think I'm about done for today. It's threatening to rain, and I got this last edge where the pieces of sheet metal meet. I got it riveted, so from that end all the way over I'm good. And then up here, I'm not going to rivet that yet, but I am going to clamp it up high before I do the top rail or top channel. So next on this project will be drilling the top channel holes and caulking and running bolts through it, followed by rivets. The bolts will go where the hat channels are, and one in the middle of each set of hat channels. So but yeah, that's the next step, just like we did on the other side. Alright, so here's a better view of the progress. Got that all gone all the way up on the edge. We got that one done all the way up. That edge all the way. Same with that one. And that seam there all the way up. Caulk looks wide when I use a wire wheel. Actually, all the excess caulk will get rubbed off on both sides or all the way around with a wire wheel before doing any kind of paint prep. Then we'll run another coat of primer and probably a couple coats of paint by the time it's all done, but that's a project for a different phase of the project. So anyhow, I'm not doing this yet. I need to overlap the front before I rivet that channel there. So anyhow, next step again is that top rail or top channel. Okay, so I'm back at the bus. It is a beautiful spring day, 69 degrees, and hardly a cloud in the sky, so really pretty out. I'm going to drill the top rail, caulk it, and then we'll run bolts in between the hat channels and at each hat channel all the way down. After that, I'll run a rivet line across the top of that rain rail there at the top of the bus. So that's what we're doing today. Okay, so I started at the front and drilling these holes down through the reskinning metal, sheet metal. So it's tedious, lots and lots of holes. I'm gonna bet I've drilled over 1,000 holes already on this project. There you go. One more down. Okay, so I've drilled through the reskinning panels all the way down the top rail to about the last section, really. Yeah, section and a half or so. So, almost done drilling the holes. Then I will caulk and we'll run bolts down from inside and outside. My son will have to help me with that to avoid 30 trips outside. Okay, so I just drilled through the last hole in the top rail. That one right there. So now I'm going to caulk and go outside and run bolts through with my son. We're going to do one on each hat channel like we did before, one in between each hat channel, and then over here. So that will cinch things in, because as you recall, the rain drip edge of the roof is part of the roof panel, and it all flexes out when you remove the old rivets. So the bolts help draw everything together so that riveting is much easier to do. Okay, so we had run a bead of caulk under that rain rail, and Bradley and I got bolts put in. It was a little more difficult than on the other side. This side had bowed out more, so we had to use another bolt to draw it in first. But some of them we riveted. The rivet gun's starting to misbehave a little bit, so I'm not sure what's going on there. It might need new jaws. I have abused it pretty hard on this job. Hopefully it holds out to the end. But otherwise it's been a good rivet gun. So anyway, got the top lip drawn in with 1/4-inch bolts, and then after this it'll be clean up the holes and run the rivet line down. Alright, so I'm back at the bus for more riveting. I'm going to do the top rail across. This is after Brad helped me use the bolts to tighten up the top rail. So I'm going to clean up the holes with a drill and do one section at a time with rivets. Run all the way across. It's a beautiful sunny day here. It's starting to be a little more summery out, so it's actually warm inside the bus, a little too warm. I'll have to bring the fan over from the pavilion and get it going. But anyhow, I'm going to get started. So the process I've been using is to run the drill through the holes, then fill them a little bit with caulk. Have enough caulk that the edge of the rivet's going to seal with caulk. And then I slip the rivets in, and then I'm going to rivet them quickly one by one with the gun, sort of in rapid succession, then move to the next section. So just to give a little bit of an idea of the method here, just do it in batches. That way you're not constantly wasting motion, grabbing this, then grabbing that. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of an issue with my riveter where when I release the trigger, it slides up the mandrel instead of staying close to the rivet. Then I've got a bit of a problem. I think I've just worn out the jaws, but I'm not sure. But what is going on here is I'm making a little tool to improvise. I'm going to be able to use this as a spacer when that happens. I'm slotting for the mandrel, and that'll take up the extra space, and hopefully I'll be able to pop the mandrel still when that happens until I'm able to fix this riveter. So anyhow, seems to happen with my 1/2-inch rivets, which I'm using on this section. Not so much with the 1/4-inch rivets, because they pop with 1 pump of the trigger. But these require 2 pumps of the trigger, and the riveter's just sliding out. So not sure what's causing that, but probably just need new jaws for it is my guess. I've probably just worn out the mechanism with so many rivets. But anyhow, improvising. Oh, now it's working, making a liar out of me. Okay, so when it does that, I've got this tool I made, slot back in, take up the slack. So I don't know what's wrong with the rivet gun, but I don't really want to go and get a new part for it. So right now I'm improvising.
So what's happening with it?
It's riding up the mandrel for some reason after the first one. It only does this with the 1/2-inch rivets.
Alrighty.
So it doesn't do it with the shorter rivets.
This is a rough camera.
Yeah.
Did it again.
See, it did it again. So we put the tool in and stop the problem.
Yep.
Okay, so that section is finished. A little slower having to improvise, but I'll keep it moving. Alright, so I'm running down the top of the bus here, and I realized I'm actually running low on rivets here. These are the 1/4-inch. That bag has the 1/2-inch. So I might have enough to get all the way down, but definitely need to consider getting some more rivets here to finish this job. It's kind of shocking. I bought a lot. It was 1,000 in one bag, and I think 500 rivets in the other, if memory serves, plus a couple other boxes I bought at Tractor Supply. So I'll see if Tractor Supply has these 1/4-inch rivets. Okay, so I'm not quite halfway down here. Just got to this door, and still have to get all the way to the front there. So hopefully I have enough rivets. Alright, so this little guy, this spider, has been walking around my work area, helping me rivet, I guess, for the last half hour. Actually seems to be following me as I go down the bus. It's really kind of cute in a way, if you're not afraid of spiders. So just a tiny little jumping spider. So thought that was a little bit of an amusement. Alright, so I finished riveting this drip edge. I had just enough rivets left after scrounging, except I think I used one aluminum one by accident here. So anyhow, the top rail's done, and it's time to order more rivets to finish the skinning of the bus here. Okay, so the top rail is finished on this side, and I just put in an order for 400 more rivets just to make sure I have enough. Alright, so I'm waiting for rivets to arrive from Albany County Fasteners, where I ordered more, and I'm doing side projects here, other things. So I know that I'm not going to be able to use these supplied wood screws to install the door. So I was counting the number of fasteners I was going to need, and I've got to go find some stainless countersunk fasteners that'll fasten these hinges to the metal door frame. So we're going to do that. I'm also going to get some more tractor paint. We're going to do another coat real soon on the floor of the bus. I think I'm going to go with white for the second coat. That way I'll know where I've painted. I'm also going to clean up the foam on that back portion, and I'll paint that. I do intend to also maybe put either patches or another coat of metal on the top of that deck to make it sturdier. So we'll see. Not sure quite what I'm going to do there yet. And I do need to work on patching that air intake with sheet metal. That I can do with the 3/16 rivets and Clecos. Okay, so it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm going to work on the side door to start with, although my rivets did come in, so I'll be continuing to rivet this side and doing the reskinning this weekend. Right now I got a little time. I'm going to get this piece of rub rail cut back. I'm gonna cut those screws off. I did check the extra piece that my diesel mechanic gave me of rub rail that was laying around his yard. It's the right profile, so I'm going to use that to trim out this door and make it look nice when I'm done. But I went to the metal yard, got some 3/4 angle to join to this frame on the back side as the door stop, or to close the door against anyway, and to hold weather seal. So my plan here is to lay that out and tack that 3/4 angle in place with the welder. And then I'll start putting the door in place. But the first step is this piece of rub rail. So I'm going to get the grinder going. This is kind of interesting. I took that hat channel off, and it looks like the factory cut a corner here and patched this section with a piece of metal that really wasn't the right shape. I would have been pissed if this is a bus I bought new and they used a patch like this with a chunk of metal missing to build some of the side structure. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that I found a manufacturing I don't know whether it's just a corner cut or what, but that would have never been okay in my book if I was buying the bus new. See, as a result of that, it may have been even a body patch somebody else did, but it looked like it was factory. As a result of that bad piece of metal being used, you can see all the rust damage caused. So either somebody did a poor body patch, or that was a really, I think it was factory like that, honestly. Somebody cut in a corner caused a lot of moisture to get in where it didn't belong here. So nothing structural, but still, it's unfortunate that whoever did that kind of workmanship caused damage here. Alright, so I tapped this little piece of metal scrap in there. That'll get covered up by the door frame, but you know, it helps having it more firm there. And then here I'm going to spray foam in along with this area, let it cure, cut it back, and then I'll put a piece of sheet metal in before we fit the door into the frame. Once we fit the door into the frame, I'll be able to use this 3/4 angle to tack up the back end of the door. I figure 2 1/4 inches of width gives us a little bit to play with the door. The door is 1.75 inches in width, so that gives us about a 1/2 inch of slop for adjusting the door and for weather stripping. So I'd like the gap for weather stripping to be about 1/4 inch. So I'd like the door to be recessed about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch recessed. Actually, I'll possibly pull this angle in a little bit. I don't know. I'm gonna have to play with it, but anyhow, just kind of making up as I go along. Okay, so I'm actually going to start drilling more rivet holes and get riveting done here today. Hopefully I can finish this side panel. So that's today's agenda. Alright, so it's a nice warm day. Probably seems like the first day of summer. It's Memorial Day weekend. It's not disappointing. So I had to break out the fan here. These are pretty good to have, these high-speed industrial fans. Just getting a little air moving inside the bus. I've been drilling the remaining holes through the sheet metal. Once I'm done drilling those from inside, I'm going to clean them up from outside and start riveting the holes that remain here. So, nice productive day. Drilling's going pretty quick. Alright, so I have finished with the 1/4 inch holes all the way down this side. Now it's time to go outside, clean up the edges, and start riveting. Okay, so here's a view from outside. All the drilled holes that need to be riveted. So I'm going to get started on that process here. Okay, so yesterday I finished riveting this whole panel, or the whole set of panels along the driver's side. So at this point both sides are riveted. And today's agenda is to deal with the front. Hopefully I can get this all buttoned up. I have a plan of using multiple segments around the corner. Got to figure out if that's going to be 2 or 3. So I'm going to have to take that back off, that corner there. I'll drill out the rivets and unbolt the bolts I was using. But anyhow, the agenda is this front, and maybe I'll get started on the back or the side door, or I might finish the muffler and move the bus back toward the shop. So we had it here to level for the roof raise. At this point I'm confident that it won't sag. Once I get the front pieces, riveted in place, then I'm confident that nothing will sag when we take the jack stands back off. So anyhow, I'm sure it'll be a productive day. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is removing this corner where I did a poor job before. I'm going to cut off the back of the rivets. The bolts I had in place I'm undoing. You can tell this was not going to work. We've got a huge gap right there. Just wasn't the way to get it done. Short of a factory bent piece with specific computer generated angles, I don't know how you would make this look good without cutting it into more than one piece. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll use 2 or 3 pieces to overlap so that the bottom and top are independent. Alright, so I got the rivets drilled. Now I'm trying to push this apart to get this piece out. I'm going to have to run a 1/4 inch bit to finish these 1/4 inch rivets, and then after that I'll hit a wire wheel to clean up the caulk that is sort of a mess around here right now. After that I can start fresh. Alright, so working on drilling these rivets out still to get this panel totally off. Got the air chisel, a regular carpentry hammer, the drill. So just trying to do this without damaging the original bus metal here. Okay, now we're gonna get this big frickin' mistake out of here. And there it is. Alright, so I just used this gnarly stiff wire wheel here to clean up the old caulk enough that I can put a new piece of metal up here. So I'm ready to lay out my plan here for take 2 on this, cut some pieces and get started. Alright, so we're also going to repair this slit that was cut when we did the cutting for the roof raise, and that one. What we're going to do is put some metal behind that will allow me to fill in with weld and then grind and make it look reasonably good by the time it's done. But the step that's important right now is just putting metal behind there, and that'll help cinch these 2 pieces together for the next step of the process, taking sheet metal around the corner. Okay, so I've tapped that piece of scrap metal in behind there, and I'm just going to fill in the old rivet holes, and that'll hold it in place, and then we'll weld a bead on it. Tack, 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 because it's thin. Weld some spots till it forms a bead. Grind, do it again, grind. That's going to be the technique for fixing that screw up there. Well, it wasn't really a screw up, it was a decision to cut there because it was the easiest way to split the bus. I knew I'd have to fix it later. So anyway, and then similarly, this here will probably just get welded from the inside since there's a good bit of metal here to beat up against. So That'll be the plan on that, although I may want to kind of fill in a little bit more thickness here before I weld that. But anyhow, that can wait till a little later because I can still access it. Okay, so I have that backing in place. I could probably even just squeeze caulk in there, but I'm probably going to weld a quick bead, grind, and then maybe fill in with body filler or caulk if I got a rough spot. But anyhow, that had to go in place before I could put the panel in here. So next step is to measure this panel here and get it cut out and in place. Okay, so I'm about to lay out and cut some pieces here for the sides in the front. And they need to be, I'll measure again, but I believe they need to be 42 by 30. Decided I'm going to make these 32 by 30. 32 will go from a nice overlap on the left to the right hand edge of that hat channel there as far as a line, and then I can do the overlap on the corner sufficient with that same dimension of 30 inches. So although that's going to be like 29 by 30 by 30, yeah, it'll work out. If I do them 32 by 30, I'll be able to do the overlap nicely, because 32 gives me 16 inches remainder on a 48-inch wide sheet. So that's a good plan. That saves material. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just clamping this piece that I cut in place, and then I'll drill some rivet holes and get it fastened. Okay, so I have this clamped into place right here above the door. Next, I'm going to drill rivet holes. I've got to go get the piece of rain gutter trim. It'll go back in place there, and it'll also cover up that uneven line. So we're going to put that in place when we rivet this panel in. So let me go find that piece and we'll start drilling holes. Okay, so I found that piece of rain guard trim. It is indeed the right one for this side of the bus. So just made sure by lining it up, making sure the holes were right. This could have been the driver's side. I got to locate that one yet. But anyway, now I'm going to drill these holes, and we will rivet it in place up to about this location right in here, because we need it loose here to get the next sheet in place behind it. So anyhow, we'll get to riveting here in a minute after I drill some holes. So I was drilling these holes, just wanted to come in and remind myself of what was behind, where the bracket was, etc. Most concerned about that device there. I think I'm going to leave the air door as an air device. So anyhow, just wanted to make sure I wasn't drilling into anything important. Okay, so I have that panel in place. I'll put the rivet line on the side later. I'm going to keep wrapping around. I want to get this thing closed up. So next step will be going around the corner here. This might be foolish, but I'm going to try doing this again with one piece. I'm going to make a little different attempt. I'm going to unfold the folded over edges and cut it. I already cut one side off. Look for 28.5 for the dimension. And that should work a lot better and be flexible. So hopefully that'll let me, now that I've sealed that up, it's not going to bow out. Hopefully with the lines I've drawn up there, I don't know if you can see the yellow lines. I'm going to line up probably with the right angle line there and start bending around the corner as I rivet. So hopefully this goes better than the first attempt. Actually, I won't rivet right away. I'll use the bolts again. Okay, so I used the electric shears to cut one edge off, and then the other one I unfolded and used the angle grinder to make a single thickness out of it. This one's going up at the top, so the holes will be hidden, and then this edge will be at the bottom, going around the corner. So let's hope that this method will work better. Okay, so I'm starting around the bend here with this metal. So far it's working fairly well. Still using the method with the bolts to pull things through. It's the key was to lock that corner down, of course, and line it up on the one end, and then I centered the bolt up there in the top to draw in the center of the curve. I'll be doing that again once I even out the bottom here, and we'll suck everything together. Okay, so I'm going to call today a success with this corner. Got it wrapped around. It's acceptable. It's going to need some finish work, but nothing half a can of Bondo can't fix. So anyhow, the trick was making sure the edges were a lot more flexible, measuring more carefully to begin with, and just trying it twice, I think. So anyhow, that's it for today.